Together we question.
Together we achieve.
Together we create.
Together we overcome.
And together we inspire. Welcome to the Empower You podcast.
This episode is brought to you by McElhaney, the oldest independently owned engineering and land surveying firm in Canada.
Right. So for those that are listening, would you care to just introduce yourself and your title at UVic as well?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Mami Shouten, and I go by she, her, and I am a Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Research Officer.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And again, I'm Parker DeBrune. I'm an Inspire member. And Mami, actually, you hosted a workshop for us at Inspire. I think, was that back in May, I believe? It was like our first week of Inspire.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really informative. You guys talked about, was it equity versus equality?
Yes, equality and equity, there's a big difference.
Yeah, how do you explain that difference then?
So back in the days, long time ago, many organizations really worked hard on equality, which means everyone gets same amount of support to show that they care about people in their organization. But what happened as a result was again creating huge gaps between staff members or members of the community achieving success. Mm-hmm. So then there was a movement and curiosity started, and equity was born, really, about paying close attention to individual needs and providing adequate support for each members. Mm-hmm. So that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So probably much more complicated too to actually enact something like that.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of intentional planning and intentional engagement to pay attention to different members of our community's needs. So historically marginalized members definitely have a lot of steps they have to go through to get where they are, as opposed to those people with privilege.
Right.
So, yep.
Absolutely. And when you say from where they are to somewhere, is there a defined destination or objective when it comes to helping with EDI?
It can be very simple things like, physical access, for example, for, let's say, I was an international student, so I can share my experience. To get to University of Victoria, logistically, I have to, and back then there was no internet or email, so I have to mail in application from Japan, go through the school calendar and submit my course requests over the phone at that time. But anyways, once I received acceptance letter, I had to go to Canadian Embassy to apply for study permit. Oh, wow. It's a long process, and then get my accommodation arranged. I had to get a help from homestay program. I had a lot of support, but those steps I had to take to get to classroom was a lot more than probably domestic student.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but similar things can be said for students with different abilities. Because for them to meaningfully engage in classroom learning, sometimes or most of the time they have to go through Center for Accessible Learning and identify any technical support or any other support they can get to.
Right.
To even read textbook, it takes a lot more steps. Yeah. So on our campus, there are more and more movements, initiatives going to really understand different groups' needs and different individuals' needs, but that's where equity work takes time and then takes a lot of care and empathy.
And so you've mentioned in the recently that anyone witnessing an event can also make a report.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Report or ask for consultation.
Okay.
Because it is important that all of us, if we witness any harmful events or situations, we all need to be able to interrupt that sort of harmful situation.
Yeah.
And how to do that is extremely important, because just letting that happen and do nothing is no longer an acceptable course of action. Because if you just remain silent, that means you're silently supporting that harm to take place.
Yeah, and I imagine that's very terrifying for bystanders to see something going on, and like, that's probably an adrenaline response of like, oh, what do I do now? So, what does your office recommend as far as an intervention goes?
We have, our colleagues, my colleagues, we have different ways to the different recommendations. But in my workshop, I do, highlight 4D bystander intervention approach. So one is direct. So directly confront that perpetrator, saying that's not appropriate. And distract is to insert yourself between perpetrator and the victim, just maybe by saying, talk to perpetrator, all of a sudden say, hey, do you have the time? Or grab the victim, say, hey, can I borrow you for something? I need your help on something. Interesting, yeah. Yeah, so this de-escalate, really, just going in, insert yourself. There's a harm, you go in there. Yeah. Delegate is another one where you seek support from person in authority. Yeah. So if something harmful is happening, you look for, floor supervisor if it's in the public space, or you seek support from, say, if it's something is happening in the classroom, you seek support from the instructor. Right. Or if it's workplace, then supervisor needs to be consulted, or human resources. Yeah. And then lastly, and the last one is very, very important, is delay. We call it delay, but check in with the victim to see how they're doing. Right. And let them know that they went through very harmful situation. Yeah. And you show that you care, and you show that that was not acceptable, and that we are here to support them. So those are the 4D, like direct and distract, delegate, and delay. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great system. That sounds good. Yeah, and then when adrenaline hits, your first probably reaction to harmful situation is to really direct. But sometimes that's not a good idea, because it's too risky. Maybe it's not safe, especially if you want to directly, address harm to somebody, some stranger. You have no idea about that person, right? Yeah. So that's a bit dangerous. Also, when there's a power dynamic, if the perpetrator is somebody in authority above you, and if you directly confront that person, that may bring harm to you to some ways, right? Yeah. And you don't want to engage in that situation. So you seek different Ds to address harm in a different way. Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And is there an option for someone to sort of bring up an event or situation anonymously? I think, again, going back to EQHR's confidential consultation and share the event. And depending on the severity of the event, probably there will be some maybe follow-up actions. But when we say confidential, we absolutely honor that. So yeah, of course. That's great to hear. And I think you mentioned before we started recording that you guys are releasing an equity action plan right now? Yep. Am I saying that right? Yeah, equity action plan. Yeah. EAP. Yeah. Yeah. What would that be about, more or less? So equity action plan is a institutional level strategy and commitment document that the UVic is going to be abiding by in whatever we do to create inclusive community, and also build stronger sense of belonging to all members on campus. Right. So we started this planning. I mean, I can't say we. EQHR office led these initiatives by first, forming a committee of over 27 members representing different community groups on campus. So we had presence of students, staff, faculty, And then our committee started working on how to collect diverse voices on campus. So we dug deep on identifying systemic barriers, like real systemic barriers exist on campus.
Can you give any examples?
So one of the examples is recruitment and retention, because there are a lot of, gray areas or not. We needed to pay more attention to, equitable recruitment process. So that, so that's one. The other one is accessibility. So, through a number of conversation cafes with community groups, we heard a lot about accessibility issues from students and staff members, and especially during COVID days.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It just the accessibility became a huge issue for a number of our community members. So we found that needs to be one of our universal goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And compared to when you first started your position to now, have you seen a lot of change?
Absolutely. Huge changes. Yeah. So there's, first of all, I have dual reporting duty to Vice President Research Innovation and Office of Equity Human Rights Office.
Yeah.
So on the research side, university is facing a huge external pressure from federal funding programs. So tri-agencies, so that's a combination of three federal funding programs. They have been pushing the value of EDI in everything they do, including funding application.
Oh, wow.
So interested researchers have to embed EDI considerations in their application.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So how they run their team, to how they, collect data, how they analyze, data, how to mobilize their knowledge, all have to somehow have some component of EDI.
Yeah.
And if any researchers didn't spend much time in the EDI section, there is a direct impact or direct consequence, meaning they won't get the money.
Yeah.
Right? So there is that pressure. So there is a huge demand for training on EDI from the researchers or research communities.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of times I'm there providing guidance and also making sure that we have equitable process in selecting certain, research topics when we nominate, our research topic to federal funding agencies. So we do that as well.
Right.
So just trying to make sure that there's an equitable and transparent process.
Yeah.
So our UVic researchers feel like, okay, I understand why I didn't get it, or okay, next time I need to focus on this.
And I imagine there's probably some trickle down effect from that, where maybe you're seeing a reduction in the rates of, incident reports over the years, something like that. Or
that I'm not there yet.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Hopefully we will get there.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think trickle down effects. I'm hoping that all these successfully, researchers who successfully receive funding, they are actually implementing their proposed EDI actions, and that participating students and other members feel they belong to a safe working environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's external pressure. But internally, so like I said about, equity action plan, but also universities, UVic strategic framework, and other strategy document like research innovation. They all have EDI as core principle.
Right.
And now we're at the stage of, okay, so when we do, or what kind of action can we do to say, yep, we have honored these EDI principles. So we are exploring like how can we track these activities, increase accountability on our part to say, yeah, this is what we say we're going to do. and then we actually do it, right? Because I think large organizations like UVic, we're pretty good at saying what we hope to do, what we are going to do, but we're not so strong at tracking activities and reporting back to the community. To say, yeah, UVic, we promised we were going to do, and 12 months later, this is what we did.
So it's a pretty important priority for you guys then.
Absolutely, it is very important, yeah.
That makes sense. So are there any other resources available to students as far as EDI is concerned and equity? You've mentioned Cal as well. And of course, there's the, the caseworkers in the office that you mentioned.
Yeah. And if you are just, curious about EDI, Equity Human Rights Office have resources and initiatives highlighted on our website. And every November, we hold week-long events called 5 Days of Action, week filled with lots of workshops.
Yeah.
So that's an exciting initiative for us and makes us very busy, but that's all worth it, right?
Yeah.
And then throughout the year, we hold a lot of different events that we always seek engagement from our community, including students. And in March, we hope to have some event around anti-racism, and we're in close conversation with local community groups to see what kind of event we can hold. It could be workshop, or it could be a collaborated event,
right?
Maybe. So yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yes.
Just gonna take a look at the questions. For a second here. We can always edit out a few parts here, so don't feel like we can't take a break.
Yeah. No, it's good. I think I do feel, the case management side, I definitely have just to skim through what they do, but there's definitely lacking depth because it's not my specialty. So I just want to plant this kind of warning that what I'm saying may not be 100% accurate.
Right. Yeah. You're more on the research side of things, right?
Just a very brief overview of what the confidential consultation takes place. But
so it's probably a good idea for anyone listening to actually go check out the website itself.
Yes.
And what's the website again?
So Equity Human Rights Office's website, and it's www.uvic.ca/equity, and that will take us to the EQHR, so Office of Equity Human Rights Office's website. And then under there's different tabs that you can click. But if you're seeking support, then there is a button for Get Support.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Do you know of any other EDI initiatives happening at UVic, maybe outside your office?
Yeah, I have a little bit of engagement in one initiative, and I'm saying a little bit because I didn't do the whole launch and implementation, but my colleague did. It is for all faculty members to go through online equity training.
Right.
So any faculty members who are involved in hiring new faculty or selection committee for promotion or tenure, they all have to go through this online equity training that my colleague have designed.
Right.
So just to setting the whole, to make sure that everybody's on the same page when they have to make very important decision. So that's one initiative. There are a lot of student advocacy group offering student-centered events and activities that I would also, encourage listener to check out.
Yeah.
Let me see other initiatives. Okay.
Yeah, we're coming up close to the end here, and we'll edit these parts out.
Yeah.
The pauses and everything. But I'm kind of curious actually. Was this something you knew you always wanted to do? Was be part of the EDI research?
I think so. I came here as an international student from Japan long time ago, and since then I went through a lot of changes to my identities, right? From student to employee, and also a single individual to, married with 2 children and a mother. All of that made me curious about identities. And at that time, throughout my journey in Canada has been amazing. But there are times where I felt like I don't think I belong here. Or what's happening? Like this is I feel very pushed out of this certain community or group. What's going on? And that always, that I guess I call it lived experiences. And then, prior to starting this position, I was more student-centered position. So I was with co-op, I was with international programs. So I've seen students going through hard times. And my focus was more on the intercultural side of things. So, why there are such differences in student experiences. And then during COVID, opportunity came up where I took EDI program at UBC. And many dots were connected in my head to go, oh my God, yes, this explains a lot of things. And I was more inspired to feel like, I can be part of this conversation.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of this conversation. So when I saw this opportunity in the job posting, I'm like, I had to apply for this.
That's amazing. I have so much respect for that.
Yeah, no, and even I have to admit, like I said, I was always student-centered service provider in the post-secondary education. So switching over to researcher was a big cultural shift for me.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
It's almost like joining different universe and relearning how things go.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still learning, but EDI was still a common thread where I'm like, I can find myself in EDI topic in research. And I'm like, no, I can totally help, or I'd love to help here. So that's how I ended. I did not, prior to COVID, I did not picture myself being in this role and meeting with, researchers on how to prepare funding application or anything like that. So,
but I imagine it gives such an amazing sense of purpose too, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is the most impactful thing that you've learned in your journey through EDI?
Being mindful. I think I'm mindful means it takes time. So when you want to react to something, we all have bias and we all have stereotypes and all of that. And it's easy for us to just react to situation with your own bias or stereotypes. But to be mindful is putting a stop right there to get, I have this reaction, but is this appropriate?
Right.
And I need to really mean the impact. If I say this, what does that mean? And what does that mean to the other person? Even if I mean well, sometimes my action may not be perceived as positive. So I really have to be mindful about that. And mindful and accountable, I think.
Yeah.
Because it goes hand in hand. Because yes, people make mistakes. I make a lot of mistakes. And thanks to my colleagues and friends, they were so, very supportive in my journey. And when I made mistakes, they're there to say, maybe we should do this, or, and I can go back to saying, okay, I made a mistake. I want to acknowledge that. I want to apologize. I want to do this. Can you be my soundboard? And then they help me through. And being accountable is difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, not just saying sorry, but you have to mean it and say, sorry, I messed up.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not in my intention, but that doesn't matter because as a result, I know you were hurt. And I want to take this with me as a learning experience, and so that I can prevent this from happening again.
Yeah.
So yeah, mindful and accountable. I think those are the two key things for me.
That's incredible. It takes an amazing amount of humility, I imagine. Being able to just like, be mindful and sit with whatever's going on for you and recognize that that's not really what is the whole picture. That's just what's going on for you. And then taking a moment to not react to that or throw that into the situation.
Yeah.
You can often make mistakes and make things worse for yourself by doing that.
It's difficult, and I'm still like, I don't know. It's a long journey.
I get it wrong still. But I definitely try to be mindful as well. But there's always more I could learn that way. For sure. It's hard. It's really hard to be mindful.
It's very hard. It's super hard. And then many times I can think of many situations where I'm like, oh my God, I want to travel back in time. I want to just bury myself, deep in Pacific Ocean.
I definitely get those moments too.
Yeah.
I think it's important to also have a degree of self-forgiveness, when those kind of memories pop up. It's like, forget the experience, remember the lesson, and
exactly
move on and just don't repeat the same mistakes.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredibly enjoyable conversation.
Oh, yes, likewise. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Yeah, thank you. It was great. And like I said, I think, even if you just want to connect with me to have a conversation about, your own journey of equity, diversity, inclusion, and anything that makes you go, oh, I don't know how I can take this. I can take this, so I'm not sure. Like, always reach out, because having conversation is a first step.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Is just be heard. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Parker.
I'm Parker DeBrune.
I'm your co-host, Jenna Melman.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. Until next time, stay inspired.